I think it's now safe to start. There are now 11 of you, so that's more than majority. So good afternoon, grade 11. Before we proceed with the discussion of lesson 3, which is the value of qualitative research, I'd like to make a follow-up again on your choice of a research topic. Next week, this week happens to be the last lesson. This is our last lesson before your prelims exam. Your prelims are scheduled on September 17 to 19. So there will be no new lesson given by next week. What's going to happen next week is that we will do some reviews of the discussions of the lessons that we have had. By the time your quarterly exams or your prelim exams are done on, today is September 8th, so September 15, September 22, on September 22, I will then be presenting to you the parts of your research paper. So hopefully, after having presented the parts of your research paper, you can then start the conduct of your study. Which brings me back to the same question. What are now your research topics? I hope you have now finalized your research topics. You don't have to put the topic in the form of a question because that will be crafted later on. By the time we proceed with the format, we can then go with how the topic will be crafted in the form of a question. I just want to get the research topic that you want to deal with for the semester. I like to start with Vince. Vince, what is it again, Vince, that you want to talk about?
I actually thought else, sir.
Again, sorry.
I,
Yes, Vince.
um, I be
It's kind
back.
of choppy, Vince. Can I request you to
Uh,
type it in the chat box? Let's go with Josh. Josh Ray.
I plan to make a comparison between students who play while studying and those who don't play while studying.
How do you intend to compare them? In what areas are you going to compare them, Josh?
The results and the the results in their tests.
And I think you know what that means. I think you know what it means, Josh, when you talk about the results in the
I
test.
plan to quality.
Josh?
Quanti.
Yeah.
It includes numbers and then
When you talk about the scores of the students in a test or performance of the students in the test, you'll be comparing scores of those who. It's all right. Thank you for informing me, Rodney. If you talk, Josh, about the comparison of students' performance, of students who play computer games and those who do not, then the comparison of their performances in school, in their studies, more or less you're going to solicit the performance coming from their scores, if not coming from the grades. And that would mean numbers. What about me? From Vince. How will you intend to evaluate this one, Vince? You really need to look for people who bashed. Do you have a good deal of people to solicit and a credible set of people to solicit answers for this concern, Vince? I'll try to consider it for a while, Vince. I'll call someone else. What about Lucia?
How pollution changed with quarantine?
How? Sorry. How pollution?
Changed with quarantine.
How pollution changed with quarantine? How do you intend to gather your data there, Lucia? By the way, whenever I place that question on how you intend to gather the data, it does not mean that the data you'll always obtain is numeric data. Take note, when you do an interview, when you do a survey, when you give a questionnaire, it's still possible that it's an open-ended kind of instrument, which means that answers can be themed, contextualized later on. So like in your case, Lucia, how do you intend to gather your data there?
Okay, so much for giving a side class. Let's proceed to our discussion today.
Try to consider it. In your attempts to do a qualitative research, you'll have to still include or involve a person or two or three persons. Unless your study wants to critically analyze a particular text.
Okay, so then
Like for instance, I think I made mention of this last time. If you want to critically analyze a novel,
are you familiar with
yeah, I think there was someone from your class last week who said, na, sir, can I analyze a manga? Mangas are product of Japanese literature, and yes, they are part of literature, so you can critically analyze them. But you should know the lens that fits best the analysis of that particular selection or group of selections. In your case, Alan, is it still about eating disorders? Hello, Alan? Alan? What's wrong with Alan is not moving at all. What about Cher?
Has music motivated you to do better?
Again, sorry.
Has music motivated you to do better in your student life?
Okay, so not in the form of a question, it's more or less going to be about music as a motivation to what is it again? Motivation for?
To do better in student life.
Music as a motivation to do better in student life. So same thing, same concern. How would you intend to gather your data here? And then who do you intend to also include? Who would serve as your target respondents or participants in this study?
I think I will ask
It's
them.
basically the formula that we will use for
I think
sine,
the people that
cosine,
our
and tangent.
are
Okay?
more likely
So
to
what is that for class?
Again, sorry. The line is a bit choppy.
I will gather the data by asking questions.
Okay.
People I'm most likely to talk about or talk about it for those who are interested in music.
And that you should try to consider that when you choose these people, other than them having that inclination towards music, music really had motivated them to do better in their student lives. Because that's the criteria that's a criterion that needs to be met coming from your choice of a topic. Music became a motivation or a subject of motivation, an object of motivation to become better in their lives as a student. You will not just simply, one of the restrictions in your research share is that you will not just simply handpick or pick out students just because they love music. You should pick out a student, a participant, because that participant has been motivated to do better because of his or her choice of or love for music. Edson.
Side A is your adjacent side.
Can I change the one I suggested
It's all
last
right.
time?
Feel free.
How about ano, sir, like
I think that is
the effects of
module.
biking every day, like
Sorry. Effects of
Yeah. So we have here
doing daily biking thing. Call that,
Again, doing a. The line is a bit choppy, son. Doing a.
ano sir, like the effects of biking every day. Like,
Biking. The effects
yeah,
of biking every day. What effects are you referring to?
like
Health
maybe
effects?
like yeah, something like that. Yeah.
How will you gauge that? How will you measure it?
Um, through their fitness or something.
How would
Like
you define how would you define the status of fitness?
by their age, sir, like there's something naman like the average or the normal
And
yeah, the
and then
normal
what does that involve?
yeah,
It involves
numbers.
and it
It becomes
becomes a quantitative
quantitative.
study.
Like
However,
or
son,
about
that
sir.
problem, that topic that you have thought of has a qualitative touch. It does. I would not give it to you. You should give it to me. I know for a fact that that topic you thought of or you gave me now has a qualitative version. You need to tell me what it is. I know already what are it's. Actually, there are qualitative versions of that topic, son.
Okay, I'll try to
I will
think
not
about it.
tell you the options. You should give me the possible way to tweak it into something qualitative. Take notes on versions. So there are many of them.
Yes,
Alona.
sir.
Alona. Alona Meriton Melanchon. Yes, Vince.
No, sir.
There, Alona responded already. Yes, yes.
It's how my family with the quarantine.
Again. Sorry. Wait, is it your study that talks about how your family has coped with the quarantine with this situation?
Yeah, current situation.
Um, what did I comment on that last time? Alona? What was my comment on that topic last time?
I did not say anything.
I did not? Did I not say? Okay, now I'm going to say something about it. Alona,
You did not say anything about
now I'm going to say something about it.
Quarantine is still early.
As the topic is about what your family's coping mechanisms are during this pandemic or quarantine period, look into the several areas in a family's coping mechanism, like how they have coped with financial matters, and some other important matters that your family is quite affected on. Do not, because if you talk about coping mechanisms, that would be too broad. Try to look into the many areas where coping mechanisms were exhibited by your family. Huh? Let's go with Vince. What about you, Vince? Vince's frame is frozen. Sean?
Sir,
What is it? Was yours? How did you term
my
it?
my plan A, sir, is about colorism, sir. Then
Okay.
my plan B is procrastination of students and the effects.
Again. Sorry. What's plan B?
Procrastination of students, sir, and the effects of procrastination.
Oh, okay. I think you will not have a difficulty looking for people to consider as
Yes, sir, I have some
participants in that
friends.
study. I think that's fine. Between plan A and plan B, Sean, I would consider plan B to be more workable.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think more plan B would be more feasible. Not to mention that it's a relatable topic, and then again, you will not have a difficulty looking for people to involve in your study.
Yes, sir.
The shortcut for
Sir Joe.
the abbreviation rather for is what? The abbreviation for
So I think there's not the only concern there, Sean, is the crafting of the questions later on that you will have to. Sean Bolotan. No, sorry, Sean. It's Sir Joe. Sir Joe is asking for the name of Sean. So it's what just needs to be completed there, Sean, will be the questions that you'll place in the instrument. And later on, we can filter which among the. I think it was also my comment last time. We can filter later on which among those questions fit best for a qualitative purpose.
Okay, sir.
You can have you started gathering some literature for that?
secant of alpha, the
I
formula
haven't,
there
sir,
is
but
sha. So hypotenuse divided
I'm
by
going to
the
take those quiz after this.
and for
Probably
cosecant,
after the
the
prelims, sir.
formula there
Yeah.
is chu. For choice.
If you it would help a lot if you have already started gathering some literature or studies theories that could relate to the topic that you are already thinking of, especially that what just needs there is the crafting of the paper. The topic is more or less doable already. It's fine. Christopher?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome. What about in the case of Christopher? What's the possible research topic?
Ano sir?
Secant is the reciprocal of
Comparison of
cosine.
the daily
Cosecant is the
living
reciprocal of
of
sine.
with the source of income
That
before
is
COVID
why
and
we
after.
cannot use this
After
as in
during major.
Yes, I wanted to pinpoint that right away. Let's not go with after COVID because it's not yet done. What comparison of what is it again? Comparison of
The daily living sir.
daily living. How do you intend to comparison their? How do you intend to compare the daily living of people? What are the areas of comparison?
Hindi, ano sir, ano? I cannot say it in English. I don't know the term sir. But
The sine and cosine
my
of the
point
formula
is,
is represented by this and sin
what
and
is
cos,
the ano sir?
sin,
Go. What is the
sin, cos, and tan. Sin, cos, and tan. Or
Ano sir?
sine, cos, and tan.
Galisod ba sila or
Para sa
di wala?
we
May ano
can
sir.
find there sin, cos, and tan.
because the topic, the first part of the topic sounds like it can't be measured even in qualitative terms unless you have defined already the areas that you are going to compare them. Please try to look into that.
Yeah.
James?
Thank you sir.
Yeah. James?
Sir, I'm still figuring out how I will use the
Wait,
thing.
what is BMI for? You placed BMI earlier.
No, Edson said na the
This is
kanina.
for Edson's problem.
Yeah, he was like he will measure the if normal.
Bike,
It was like BMI.
biking, okay,
Yeah.
BMI. And Edson, BMIs involve numbers.
Yes.
Edson, even if BMIs have respective descriptions like someone is overweight, underweight, normal, these descriptions are placed beside a numeric calculation or computation. So James, you're still thinking of a possible problem.
No, the
Topic.
I told you, sir, last time na I will revolve it around that said topic about how the gaming community is affected by COVID. I'm still
Okay.
formulating a question on how it will work.
And but still the concept is in the gaming community
Yes,
and how the gaming community has been affected
by the pandemic. Yes.
by the pandemic. Okay, so it's good that at least the ground established that you'll just have to look into, just like I think that was also Edson's, no? That where I commented earlier. The topic is there. His approach now is just quantitative, but there are available qualitative versions. So that's what you'll also do, James.
Yes po, sir. Yes po.
To approach the topic in a manner that will make it qualitative. So you'll just have to look into angles. In the case of Jana. Jana? Yes, sorry? Hello?
About playing online games, sir.
Oh, okay, about playing online games. What about the playing of online games? What in it?
How
What about it will you put in a research?
how much load they spend, or
Again, sorry?
how low they spend to just to play a game?
Again, sorry. It's how?
How much the load they use, sir?
Okay. How much load they spend to play the game?
Yes, sir,
Is
and the
that
time.
so? Now that you're talking about how much time, how much load, that involves numbers,
Yes, sir.
and it now leaves the realm of qualitative research, but it goes into quantitative research. However, in the concept of computer gaming, there is actually, just like the comment that I've given to Edson, there's also an angle that you can consider. There are angles that you can consider in order to tweak it into a qualitative study. You don't necessarily have to leave the concept of computer gaming. You can still use it, but look at that angle that makes the study qualitative. Before I go to Rodney, here's a question from Vince. And change instead to which do parents prefer? Their children being good in academics or being good in sports? Wait. This requires a tabulation, Vince. The question that you have placed or given privately requires a tabulation, and it would require more people. I'm not sure if you'd have the luxury of time and availability of people to tap as respondents for this, especially that you're talking about parents. Now I'd like to listen to Rodney. Alan is having some internet problems. Yes, Rodney?
My first is I'll go with the education, the one that I mentioned last time.
What I think it was about the uneducated persons. Was it that one?
Yes, that's my plan A, sir.
So, is there already a plan B?
Yes, sir.
What is second plan B?
How to act like a leader during the time of change.
During the time of
Change.
change. And what time is this that you're referring? What time of change are you actually referring to here?
Like for now, sir, this time.
Because I think it would help perhaps if you're just going to be direct for that particular period where someone has to be evaluated on how he or she has acted to be a leader. Because the term time of change might be misinterpreted or misunderstood.
Okay, sir.
The concept of leadership also is also going to become a good target for qualitative researches. It just comes out on how the questions will actually be crafted to fit the goal and the limitations of a qualitative study. So even if you're welcome, Rodney. So even if your classmate, even if you in your class, you are talking of academic performance, pollution, attitudes, behaviors. They may be quantitative by nature, but your approach can be changed to make it appear qualitative. Effects, if you talk of the word effects, technically or scientifically speaking, that is more of an experimental structure which places it for a quantitative type of research. However, you may look at a particular angle to wrap it in a qualitative study. Hopefully, by the time we finish, or by the time you will have finished taking your first major exams, your prelim exams, you will be more or less ready now to proceed into crafting your research paper after I present to you the format. At this point, I will now share to you the screen for lesson 3, which is the value of qualitative research. So try to consider these in your choice for a qualitative study or in your plan of doing your qualitative researches. There are major characteristics of qualitative research. First, it is considered to be a naturalistic inquiry, as it studies the real world situations as these situations naturally unfold. It's non-manipulative, unobtrusive, and non-controlling, especially that in this study, there's no such thing as a manipulated variable, a controlled variable, experimental variable. No, we don't do that. These experiment manipulations, controls, we do them for experimental researches. However, it has openness to whatever emerges. This leads to a lack of predetermined constraints on outcomes. Qualitative researches also follows the inductive analysis. Immersion in the details and specifics of the data to discover important categories. It begins by exploring genuinely open questions rather than testing theoretically derived hypotheses. In the first place, a hypothesis is used for a quantitative type of research. Qualitative researches follow a holistic perspective. The whole phenomenon under study is understood as a complex system that is more than the sum of its parts. Focus is on complex interdependencies, not meaningfully reduced to a few discrete variables and linear cause-effect relationships. Linear cause-effect relationships, these are for quantitative experimental researches. That A is the reason why B occurred. Qualitative data, it's the kind of data that's obviously maximized in qualitative research. The data is expected to be detailed, at the same time thick. It's a thick description of a phenomenon. Inquiry in depth. It's not as simple as knowing how many times a person plays computer games. Because if you simply go with the number of times a person plays computer games, that's the end of a quantitative approach. However, if you go with what drives you to play computer games, then the person defines or identifies reasons. After these reasons, you make follow-ups like, when you did these computer games, were you satisfied? Did you feel satisfied? What's your source of satisfaction while playing computer games? Were the reasons strong enough to drive you to play computer games? And again, these questions placed in in-depth inquiry would lead to detailed perspectives coming from the participants. It's also because of that, it's also because of the openness of answers where direct quotations will have to be used. Direct quotations capturing people's personal perspectives and experiences. I'm not sure if I hope I've mentioned it. When you do an interview with someone, if the person answers in the vernacular, because probably your target respondent places an answer in the vernacular, the vernacular answer will have to be documented. But its translation will be provided in the tabulation, in the presentation of data. The vernacular responses will be placed as attachments, but still it's important to include the non-English answers given by your participants, directly quoted responses. Qualitative researches also involve personal contact and insight. This is where the researcher has direct contact with and gets close to the people, situation, and phenomenon under study. Researchers' personal experiences and insights are an important part of the inquiry and critical to understanding the phenomenon. This possibility of having direct contact and getting close with the people is already the immersion, where that researcher, qualitative researcher, immerses him or herself in the community that's being studied. Or even if the person is just studying, even if the researcher is just studying one person, the researcher might still feel the need to immerse him or herself in that community where the participant belongs, for the researcher to know how the participant behaves, carries himself, brings himself in the presence of other members in the community. Without immersing him or herself, the researcher might just be presenting flawed information. Qualitative researches also follow dynamic systems where there is an attention to process and it assumes change is constant and ongoing, whether the focus is on an individual or an entire culture. In fact, if you go to the comparison back for lesson 2, if you go to the comparison of a qualitative and a quantitative research, and a quantitative research, qualitative researches give more room for how the study progresses, how it eventually changes, how it becomes to be ongoing, instead of how quantitative researchers do it, that they say settle with what's provided at the onset of the study. Qualitative researches follow a unique case orientation. Qualitative researches assume that each case is special and unique. The first level of inquiry is being true to, respecting, and capturing the details of the individual cases being studied, and a cross-case analysis follows from and depends on the quality of individual case studies. It's also because of this that qualitative researches cannot make generalizable outcomes, because they consider a particular case to be unique and special to a group, to a minimal number of participants, or even to just a single participant. It's not qualitative researches do not follow there's water. The younger brother of Janu. Free. Sorry. There's a 10. Huh?
Can I leave the meeting so I can see your screen?
You can't see the screen?
Yeah,
Wait,
like it's all black. Something happened to my Zoom, so is it okay?
Oh, okay. And then just request later on to be added, sure.
Okay, thank you.
As said, even before it was given last week, in a qualitative research, we cannot make use of a sample and the results of the sample be applied to a population. No. If it were just that case, then the situation will not anymore be unique or special. That's how quantitative researches work. As for a qualitative research, we go with what case is available to a single unit, to a participant, which could be entirely unique or special as compared to another participant. That's the unique case orientation characteristic of qualitative research. It also follows context sensitivity, where qualitative research places findings in a social, historical, and temporal context. It follows emphatic neutrality. Complete objectivity is impossible. This was also placed last time. The researcher may find himself in a qualitative research. The researcher may find him or herself may find it not easy to set him or herself apart from the participants being studied. The researcher's passion is understanding the world in all its complexity. The researcher includes personal experience and emphatic insight as part of the relevant data, especially that the researcher has taken the time to know the community where the participant belongs. There's also a design flexibility available where the study is open to adapting inquiry as understanding deepens and or situations change. Qualitative researches avoid getting locked into rigid designs that eliminate responsiveness. Qualitative researches pursue new paths of discovery as they emerge. For quantitative researches, the research designs limit the manner of responses that can be solicited from participants. But for a qualitative type of research, such a limit does not exist. It's just a matter of how the researcher is able to capture and record or document these manifestations or behaviors from the participants of the study. Types of qualitative researches. You might want to consider this, especially that you are doing a qualitative research now. You might do a phenomenology. A phenomenology focuses on the commonality of a lived experience within a particular group. It is the fundamental goal of the approach is to arrive at a description of the nature of a particular phenomenon. Like for instance, this is ambitious and I would not want you to do this. If you want, however, if you want to, it's fine. I will not stop you. If you want to study why the people in Loon have that particular way of speaking, that's a form of a phenomenological study. I don't know, but have you noticed that particular accent of the people in Loon? Or even of the people in Hagna? Or the people in Dawis? The people of Dawis have been labeled, or Dawis itself before had been labeled to be the land of wrong grammar because there are several expressions of the people in Dawis that tend to omit words, making these expressions syntactically incomplete. However, semantically or in terms of meanings, the people in Dawis could still understand each other despite the absence of particular expressions or particular words. In the vernacular, you'll hear people say, "Muadto ko tagbilaran." Palit ko niya. Instead of mupalit ko niya. Instead of saying, sakay ko tricycle. Instead of saying, musakay ko og tricycle. This is a phenomenon that is observable in quite a number of the occupants of the municipality of Dawis. If you want to know into what brought about this tendency among the occupants of the people of Dawis, or among the occupants of Dawis, what you're actually doing is a phenomenology. A phenomenological study, which is qualitative in nature. One of my teachers back in college, the name is Dr. Ramon Boloron, has a study which was entitled Dialectology. And it's quite an ambitious study. He wanted to study dialects in Bohol. He wanted to determine the reasons as to why municipalities in Bohol vary in terms of their dialects, given that we share a small province. People in Balilihan have their own intonation. My cousins from Balilihan are fond of saying words like, or fond of saying expressions like, "Dili makumonas inyo." That's product of dialectology. Or, wait, there's a Visayan. I forgot. I forgot the Visayan word. There's another Visayan word that comes to be. Here. The variation of butangi. Because others would say butngi or butngan. And others find it acceptable, while others would say, no, the expression is not supposed to be correct because the correct expression is butangan. But why is it that even if we vary in expressions, the term is already understandable, yet there is a variety of how it's being said. As to, in order to explain the background in these variations, a phenomenological study may be conducted. But I'm not sure if you have the time to really do that. If you want to do a phenomenological study of the Badjao community, then be my guest. That's also fine. But then again, I'm not sure if you really have the time and the resources, especially the time, to conduct this. Another type of qualitative research is an ethnography, where there is a direct description of a group, culture, or community. Researchers in this type of study observe and or interact with the study's participants in the real life environment. This is where the immersion of a researcher in a community takes place. The researcher needs to be part of that, needs to go to that community for him or her, for the researcher to know how that participant behaves or acts in that community where he or she belongs. But then again, do you have the time to probably do an ethnography? I think this is not quite doable. Maybe the third one, you can do this. Grounded theory. It is a research methodology for discovering theory in a substantive area, and it sets out to discover or construct theory from data systematically obtained and analyzed using comparative analysis. I think that's what most of you will actually be doing. Sir, I'll use your topic. What's your topic again, sir? Something to do with?
Music, sir. Like,
music.
it inspires you to become to have a better
How it inspires and motivates you to become better students?
student life.
Or to become better, or to have a better student life? Okay, so that idea from Cher is a formulation of a theory that music becomes a good motivation to develop a good student life. And the reasons are, so after Cher does her study, she'll be able to identify the reasons, and what she's actually doing is a grounded theory, qualitative type of research. And I think most of you will be into this category. It is a development of a theory directly based and grounded in the data collected by the researcher. So if you Sean again is doing, what is again, Sean, the topic? Procrastination. Is it procrastination? Plan B, I think that's plan B.
Yes, sir.
Procrastination.
Yes, sir.
So Sean, in the case of Sean, his study also falls in a grounded theory type, because he will be arriving at his theory on why. Is it on the why, Sean, or effects?
Can you say
Sean,
it again?
what's the focus of your study? On why students procrastinate, or in the effects of their tendency to procrastinate?
Sir, if I can.
Again, sorry.
Both, sir.
Yeah, that's also fine. It's fine if you. It's also good if you look at both, because you will see if such a cause truly leads to that effect. So that's also a development of a theory on your end, Sean.
Yes, sir.
The last type of qualitative research is a case study. This is based on an in-depth investigation of a single individual, group, or event to explore the causes of underlying principles. Case studies are analysis of persons, groups, events, or other systems that are studied holistically by one or more methods. I'm not sure if it's also practical on your end to do a case study. I mean, a semester might not probably be enough for you to also do a case study. Strengths of qualitative research. Issues can be examined in detail and in depth. You should expect for detailed responses, lengthy responses. Interviews are not restricted to specific questions and can be directed or guided by the researcher in real time. It is possible that as the interview goes on, the interviewer or the researcher in this case will then throw in more leading questions, probing questions, so that the participant would be able to express more. Different from that of a quantitative instrument where a statement from 5 options or 2 or 3. The research framework and direction can be quickly revised as new information emerges. Obtain data based on human experience and sometimes more compelling than quantitative data. Subtleties and complexities are discovered that are often missed by positivistic inquiries. And lastly, data usually are collected from a few cases or individuals. So findings need not be generalized to a larger population. Findings, though, can, however, be transferable to another setting, which means that your findings for person A may actually be true for person B. But it does not mean that your findings for person A should right away be true for person B. I hope you can see the difference there. Person A's findings cannot be generalized to all of your participants. But these findings may come out, may be observable from another participant. But that does not apply the generalizability of outcomes. Limitations. If qualitative researches have strengths, they also have limitations. To start, research quality is heavily dependent on the individual skills of the researcher and more influenced by the researcher's personal biases and idiosyncrasies. So this is a danger that it tends to lean so much on being a biased research work. Rigor is more difficult to maintain, assess, and demonstrate. This is expected. There's so much work, there's more work expected to be accomplished in a qualitative research, especially when it comes to the keeping of responses and detailed responses. The volume of data makes analysis and interpretation time-consuming, correct? As it is expected to get a thicker and more detailed set of information that would follow, that more time is also needed in the interpretation of the data. All the more when you are to identify the themes that are common that will be made to represent the responses provided by your participants. It is sometimes not as well understood and accepted as quantitative research within the scientific community. This has been the trend. Quantitative research has made more of its impact now because there are just so many quantitative researches available and that so many topics can be done or finished quicker or be accomplished right away with quantitative researches. That is why not so many have accepted the task of doing a qualitative research. The researcher's presence during data gathering, which is often unavoidable, can affect the subject's responses. While it's already told earlier that there's a tendency for the researcher to be part of the community where the participant belongs, there's also a possibility that the participant will be affected by the presence of the researcher. There's a possibility that the participant will now fake his or her behavior or will do something else outside of the normal or natural activities of the participants. Issues of anonymity and confidentiality can result to problems when presenting findings. One clear, obvious reason here is when presentation of findings is done, there needs to be a question of where did you get this information? Who is the person involved? And then, of course, in the field of research, since we follow the principle of confidentiality, we do not reveal the identity of our participants in our paper. There just might be a lot of doubts on the end of our readers. Did the researcher really use the correct person? Did the researcher tap the right? There are speculations. You can't blame readers if they think of speculation regarding a qualitative research. Because then again, you are involving not so many participants, plus you should keep the identities of these participants in complete anonymity and confidentiality. Difficult and time-consuming to characterize in a visual way. That is why so many of the qualitative researches purely are narrative. They appear to be in paragraph form compared to quantitative researches that have good ways of being presented, as in the case of as with the use of a table, a graph, or a chart. Quantitative researches are not to be enjoyed in a qualitative type of research. Questions? By the time you start making your papers, please expect that so many of our meetings will not be done for discussion purposes. Expect that we'll meet for the purpose of sharing your write-ups. So what's going to happen will be like this, more or less like this. Oh, wait.
Find the length. Find the unknown measure of the length.
Excuse me for a while. Give me some time.
Find angle R. So angle R is a distance over hypotenuse. So cosine, yeah. So not
There's still a document that I'm trying to open, so please give it a few seconds.
find cosine of the opposite adjacent side.
Oh, wait. Here. Wait.
How about find example finding.
So time will come where our meeting for practical research 1 will be more or less like this.
Okay.
Now, can everybody see this?
Yes, sir.
Can you see this? So, so many of our meetings in the coming days will appear this way, where one of you will share to the class the contents of his or her research paper. So it's going to be like this, like, sir, here, assuming that I'm the student, sir, same, here's my chapter 1, sir. So here's my rationale. And then it will be, the rationale that has been made by the student will be placed for feedbacking, so that the comments will have to be learned. Even if your paper has not been placed for sharing yet, you will have already learned how to improve your work, as you have already seen possible mistakes or heard possible comments regarding someone else's research paper.
It's the opposite side.
It's like this, like, oh, and then the teacher will say,
One there is like
the problem that you crafted, I think, is wrong. Try to change that part. So the student will be like, okay, sir, is this the part that I'll change? Okay, yes, that part. You need to change that. And then while you have your copies with you, your soft copies with you, you should also try to incorporate whatever comment applies to your work, until such time that everybody will have had their chance to present the study or shared through Zoom. Questions. If there's none on, are there already questions that are placed in your module?
Yes.
There are, okay. So we'll look into those answers on Thursday, after which we will do again a finalization of your research topics. If there are no questions for now, that would be all. Goodbye and thank you, grade 11.
Goodbye and thank you, sir.
Bye, sir.
Thank you, sir. Goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye.
Thank you.